Sam here from Guitar.com. I'm with Brian over at the PRS booth, and we're taking a look at the brand new S2 594 range. Now, Brian, this is the first time this model has been introduced in the S2 range, so tell us more about that and tell us why you decided to bring it into the S2 line of guitars.
Well, the whole idea with S2 is bringing some U.S.-built, hand-built guitars from Maryland into a lower price category. And the primary way they have done that is really altering the shape of the guitar. So a typical PRS that has that violin carve and like swooping angles and all this stuff takes an immense amount of time in crafting it and the sanding stages. So about an hour and a half at each sanding stage. When you talk about like a core 594, maybe 20 to 22 hours per guitar of actual hands-on time. So by making, with the S2s, by making them flat with a beveled edge, it cuts the sanding stages down to about a third of the time. It takes about 10 hours off of the build time of the guitar, roughly, maybe 8 to 10 hours, which is a substantial cost saving. So where this guitar is roughly almost $2,000 less than the core counterpart, and the primary difference is that the pickups are also made for Paul to his specs, but they're not wound in-house. But it's the same bridge, same tuners. So, the idea is to bring it into more players' availability. Not everybody, can afford the Ferraris, so it's like if you can make one that has all the mojo and the tone and the feel, it doesn't necessarily have the swooping curves and stuff like that, but it's a 594 through and through. So the 594 namesake has to do with the scale length, 24.594 inches. Up until now, it's the S2 line has always been a 25-inch scale, pattern regular neck. So they're part of the other way they've kept the prices down is by limiting options and just one S2 neck. So the introduction of this into the line brings in a whole new neck carve, and a new scale length. So this is the pattern vintage neck carve, just like you'd find on the core, and it's the 24.594. And we do have a single cut option, just like you'd find in the core. But this guitar here, thank you, is an entirely new offering. So this is the 594 S2 thin line. So that only exists in the S2 world. There is not a thin line. It is not a thin line in that it's a semi-hollow single F hole. It is where these are mahogany back with a maple top. This is all mahogany. It's overall a thinner build. It doesn't have the maple cap on it. They also put a wide, thin neck profile on it. Move the toggle switch from up here to down here. It's a lighter guitar because of the thickness. It's definitely within the same characteristics, but it really has its own voice compared to this. So this might be my favorite one. It's also $200 less.
So why did you choose to do the mahogany version then without the maple cap, and why did you decide to bring it down in size? What was the thought behind that?
Well, it's this is a thicker, denser, heavier guitar. If you think really it's great, it's a great option for a lot of people, but whether it's a weight issue, whether it's just a different tonality, I kind of like the Mira always kind of reminded me of like this kind of super straight ahead great rock machine, and they were always so light. This kind of reminds me of a fancier version of the Mira with more, with a 4-knob layout. So really just a different voice, to me, like this would work great I play a lot of slide, and like kind of using something like this for a slide, a little less lower mid-range. But again, it's also just a big feel difference. The thinner neck, there's a lot of people who have been asking for like a wide, thin neck profile in here. So there is no one guitar that works for everybody. So the more options, the better, right?
So you're catering for everybody.
What's that?
You're catering for everybody.
Well, no, you can't please everybody, obviously. The internet, you'll go on the internet for a minute, you'll see that. But, you do what you think might make sense. There's always, and there's guitars of the past that are obviously always, inspirations for everybody. And then, people do their take on it, and so it's, the idea of building this, I remember seeing a prototype of this one time I was in the factory, and it was like, hey, check this thing out. And I was like, what is this? It looks like a 594, but boy, it's so light and thin. And they were just like, what do you think? I'm like, I think it's great. So there's prototypes that come and go that never see the light of day. So sometimes it's just R&D and things and finding what like the players go, yeah, that's great, and running with it.
Great, thanks very much, Brian. Let's move along and see what else we've got brand new for NAMM 2020.
Sounds good.
All right, Brian, now we're taking a look at the new SE Hollowbody II. And what I've noticed immediately is there's a slightly wider depth in that guitar. So what can you tell me about this?
Yeah, well, the Hollowbody II in the core world starts off with a mahogany block in the middle and 2 maple caps, a maple top and a maple back, and they're both carved. And then the mahogany is routed out, and then the other cap is put on. So it's a fully carved Hollowbody in the core world, but because of the maple top and the maple back, and you think of a Hollowbody typically as a slightly thicker guitar, but it's not certainly as oversized as a lot of Hollowbodies are. So the Hollowbody II, again, has only been in the core. They've never offered an S2 version. They've never offered a fully hollow SE guitar. They've offered semi-hollows, but obviously it's a very different thing. So bringing the Hollowbody II into the SE world, this is not a carved top. It's a laminate back and sides, obviously, top and back for the cost, but it's not a better or worse sound to me. It's just different. I mean, some of the most iconic Hollowbody guitar tones in the history of music are laminate guitars. So it's just not just a different price, but a different voice.
So different in what way?
It almost is a little bit more woody to me. Like, it has a little bit more of that woody resonance. Like, when you shut your eyes and hear it, you're like, undoubtedly a Hollowbody sound. And where the carved Hollowbodies to me sound like a little bit more like a large or like an oversized semi-hollow, maybe a little, and which is, for some people, like the idea of that airiness, the kind of mid-range ringy of the semi-hollow or the carved Hollowbody. But if you really want that exaggerated Hollowbody tone, these things do it beautifully at an incredible price point. This is the Hollowbody II, which has the maple top and back. Then there's also the Hollowbody standard, and in PRS speak, a standard always means all mahogany. So this is mahogany back and top. And it doesn't have the bound F holes like this, but otherwise it's the same. This same bridge you would find on a core instrument, with the wraparound tailpiece with the brass adjustable saddles, 5815S pickups. This one streets at $999. Absolutely
Unbelievably competitive price.
Yeah, and anybody who picks one up is blown away at, like, again, if you had just handed this to somebody, they see PRS in the headstock and they strum it, and you had to guess what it costs, most people would really overshoot. It's amazing what they're doing in the SE world.
It's amazing as well that you've brought a guitar that people have always gravitated into that SE range as well.
Yeah, Jack Higginbotham, who has been with Paul since the 80s. I mean, he started off sanding bodies, and he's worked for a good chunk of the life of the company, he was the president. And very integral to the community of PRS. He stepped down as president a few years ago so he could focus on the SE line. So he has just taken on a different role in the company. But he and Doug Shive, who's been running the SE department for a long time, have worked so hard not only in the design but building the relationships with the partners overseas that are building them, and dealing with making sure the quality control is up to PRS standards. But just incredible design ideas. I remember him telling me about trying to do an SE Hollowbody, and I was like, oh wow, that would be cool. And that was a couple years ago. It took a long time from the seed of the idea to make it work, and they're never going to rush anything to market. They want to make sure it's right, and proof is in the pudding here. So I would highly recommend people getting out and checking one of these out. If you've always dreamed of owning a PRS Hollowbody, we're talking like a fourth of the cost, or, fifth of the cost almost. So not just a slight savings, that's substantial. And
Right.
worth it.
Thanks very much, Brian. See more from the brand new S2 and SE range over on guitar.com.